History and politics. The medieval period in Europe spans roughly from the 5th to the late 15th century. It began with the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476. The period ends with events like the Renaissance, the fall of Constantinople, 1453, and the Age of Exploration. Feudalism was the dominant political and social system. Kings granted land fiefs to nobles in exchange for loyalty and military service. Knights were the warrior class of medieval Europe. Peasants, serfs, made up the majority of the population. Serfs were legally bound to the land they worked. Castles served as fortified residences for nobility. Many castles were built from stone after the 11th century. The Holy Roman Empire was a major political entity in Central Europe. Charlemagne was crowned emperor in 800 by the Pope. The Byzantine Empire preserved Roman laws and culture during the medieval period. The Viking Age lasted roughly from the late 8th to the 11th century. The Normans were descendants of Vikings who settled in Normandy. William the Conqueror invaded England in 1066. The Battle of Hastings established Norman rule in England. The Magna Carta was signed in 1215 by King John of England. The Magna Carta limited royal power and influenced future legal systems. The Reconquista was a centuries-long effort to reclaim Iberia from Muslim rule. Religion and the Church. The Catholic Church was the most powerful institution in medieval Europe. The Pope was considered the spiritual head of all Christians in Western Europe. Monasteries preserved classical knowledge through manuscripts. Monks followed strict rules such as the Rule of Saint Benedict. Cathedrals were monumental religious buildings that took decades to construct. Gothic architecture emerged in the 12th century, with pointed arches and flying buttresses. The Great Schism of 1054 split Christianity into Catholic and Orthodox branches. The Inquisition sought to combat heresy. Saints played a major role in medieval religious life. Pilgrimages, such as the Camino de Santiago, were very popular. Crusades. The First Crusade began in 1096. Crusaders aimed to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim control. Crusader states such as the Kingdom of Jerusalem were established. The Third Crusade involved Richard the Lionheart and Saladin. The Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople in 1204. The Children's Crusade, 1212, was a disastrous and semi-mythical event. The Crusades increased trade between Europe and the East. They also helped transfer knowledge like medicine and mathematics. Crusader castles were among the strongest fortifications in the world. The Knights Templar, Hospitallers, and Teutonic Knights were important military orders. Society and daily life. Most medieval Europeans lived in rural villages. Houses were small, smoky, and often shared with animals. Towns grew significantly from the 12th century onward. Guilds regulated trades such as blacksmithing and weaving. Marriage was often arranged, especially among nobility. Clothing signaled social status through color and fabric. The average life expectancy was around 30-40 years. High infant mortality significantly lowered the average. Only a small percentage of people were literate. Literacy was higher in clergy and merchants. Economy and trade. Manors were the basic economic units of feudal society. Three-field crop rotation improved agricultural productivity. The introduction of the heavy plow transformed farming in Northern Europe. Trade routes connected Europe with Asia via the Silk Road. Italian city-states like Venice and Genoa became rich through trade. Fairs, such as those in Champagne, France, were major economic events. Coins replaced barter in most regions over time. Banking expanded, especially with the Medici in the late Middle Ages. Watermills and windmills increased productivity. Fishing was a major industry, especially in Northern Europe. Warfare. Knights trained from childhood to fight. Chainmail was the primary armor until plate armor developed. Plate armor became common by the 14th-15th centuries. The longbow was a decisive weapon in the Hundred Years' War. The Battle of Agincourt 1415 demonstrated the longbow's power. Castles evolved to resist sieges and artillery. Gunpowder weapons appeared in Europe in the 14th century. Armies were often composed of feudal levies. Mercenaries became more common in the late Middle Ages. The crossbow was powerful but banned by the church for its lethality. Cultural and intellectual life. Universities first appeared in the 11th-12th centuries. The University of Bologna, 1088, is the oldest known university. Scholasticism sought to reconcile faith and reason. Thomas Aquinas was a major medieval philosopher. Latin was the universal language of scholarship. Troubadours wrote poetry and songs about chivalry and love. Illuminated manuscripts were elaborately decorated books. Heraldry developed to identify knights in battle. Medieval literature included works like Beowulf and the Divine Comedy. Epic poems such as The Song of Roland were popular. Medicine and science. Medieval medicine relied heavily on Greek and Roman texts. The four humors theory dominated medical thinking. Doctors often learned from Arabic medical texts. Surgery was usually performed by barbers, not physicians. Astrology influenced medical diagnoses. Hospitals were often run by the church. The first spectacles were invented in the late 13th century. Alchemy was practiced widely before chemistry emerged. Anatomy knowledge improved slowly due to restrictions on dissection. Universities taught medicine, law, theology, and arts. Major events. The Black Death struck Europe in 1347–1351. The plague killed between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population. The 100 Years' War took place between England and France, 1337–1453. Joan of Arc played a pivotal role in the war. The Great Famine 1315–1317 devastated Europe. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 ended the Byzantine Empire. The Avignon papacy saw popes residing in France, 1377. The Western Schism resulted in multiple popes claiming authority. The Hanseatic League dominated trade in Northern Europe. The Renaissance began in Italy, in the late medieval period.